The grand hall of the Galactic Council Station buzzed with the voices of 100 different species. Translators hummed softly in the background, turning alien words into understanding. Crystal beings from the Vega system clinked like wind chimes when they moved. The fish-like Aquarians spoke in bubbling tones through their water-filled breathing masks. Giant insect creatures clicked their mandibles in what passed for laughter among their kind. Ambassador Zekthul of the Kethmoran Empire stood at the center of a growing crowd. His scaled green skin gleamed under the station's artificial lights. Sharp teeth flashed as he spoke, and his yellow eyes held the cold intelligence that had made his species feared across the galaxy for over 1,000 years. "You worry too much about these border pirates," Zekthul said to a nervous Centauri delegate. His voice carried the authority of someone whose words could order the destruction of entire worlds. "My people have dealt with vermin before. We know how to clean house." The Centauri delegate, a tall blue humanoid with 4 arms, shifted uncomfortably. "But the attacks have been getting bolder. Our merchant ships report strange vessels that appear from nowhere and disappear just as quickly. Our sensors can't even track them properly." Zekthul laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "Ghosts and shadows, nothing more. You know what we did the last time pests became a problem? 847 years ago, there was a species called humans, soft pink things, weak and pathetic. They thought they could spread their disease across our territory." Several aliens leaned closer. The humans were legend now, a cautionary tale told in the darker corners of space. Most species believed they were just a myth. "We found their little colony world," Zekthul continued, his eyes gleaming with old pride. "New Eden," they called it. 12 million of the creatures building their ugly cities and breeding like insects. They thought distance would protect them. They thought the galaxy would care about their fate. A Rigelian observer, its crystalline body pulsing with... Nervous Light spoke up. "Surely the council intervened. The laws of war." "Laws?" Zekthul's laughter cut through the hall like a blade. "What laws apply to pest control? We burned their world clean. Every city, every farm, every last breathing human. It took 3 days. They screamed for help, broadcast pleas across every frequency they knew. They begged someone, anyone, to come to their aid." The hall had grown quiet now. Even the constant background chatter of the translator system seemed muted. "And do you know what happened?" Zekthul asked, looking around the circle of faces. "Nothing. The great Galactic Council debated. The mighty civilizations of the galaxy held meetings. They wrote strongly worded letters of concern. And while they talked, we finished our work." An Andromedan delegate, its gaseous form held together by a containment suit, shifted nervously. "But surely their homeworld responded? Their fleet?" "What fleet?" Zekthul spread his clawed hands. "They had 3 worlds and maybe a dozen ships between them. After New Eden burned, we never heard from them again. Dead, all of them. Extinct. The galaxy is cleaner for it." In the shadows near the back of the hall, a figure in the simple brown robes of a merchant observer watched and listened. "Captain." Sarah Chen kept her breathing steady and her face neutral, though her hands clenched into fists inside her sleeves. The universal translator in her ear rendered every word of Zekthul's boasting into perfect English. She had heard this story before, of course. Every human had. It was carved into stone on Earth, written in the genetic memory of her species. But hearing it told as a joke, as entertainment for a crowd of aliens who nodded and laughed at appropriate moments, made her stomach burn with acid. "The lesson," Zekthul said, his voice carrying clearly across the now silent hall, "is that the strong do what they must, and the weak suffer what they will. These new pirates you fear? When they become too troublesome, we will deal with them as we dealt with the humans. Completely." Sarah's thumb moved carefully to the recording device hidden in her sleeve. Every word, every gesture, Every laugh from the crowd was being captured in perfect detail. This would be transmitted back to Earth within the hour, added to the vast archive of evidence that had been growing for 8 centuries. The crowd began to disperse as Zekthul moved on to other topics. Trade agreements, territorial disputes, the usual business of galactic politics. Sarah remained in her corner, watching the Kethmoran ambassador hold court like a king among subjects. An Altarian merchant approached her, its tentacles waving in what passed for friendly greeting among its kind. Fascinating stories, yes? The old ambassador knows much history. Sarah nodded politely. History has a way of repeating itself, she said carefully. Indeed, though some say the humans were not truly extinct, legends speak of their homeworld, hidden somewhere in the outer rim. But legends are just stories for children, yes? Yes, Sarah agreed. Just stories. The Altarian moved away, but Sarah caught something in its manner. A careful watching, a testing of her reaction. How many others suspected? How many had begun to notice the patterns? For 8 centuries, humanity had been very careful. Their traders moved quietly through the galaxy, never staying long in one place, never drawing attention to themselves. They listened, learned, and mapped. Every Kethmoran world, every ship design, every military installation had been catalogued and studied. Sarah touched the communication device hidden beneath her merchant's robes. A single pulse of data, compressed and encrypted, shot out toward a hidden relay station. From there, it would bounce through a dozen systems before reaching Earth. Another piece of intelligence added to the vast puzzle humanity had been assembling for longer than most species kept records. As she watched Zekthul continue his social rounds, greeting old allies and making new deals, Sarah felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. 847 years of preparation were nearly complete. The children of New Eden had grown up, learned patience, and become something the galaxy had never seen before. Zekthul had made one crucial mistake in his boasting. He assumed that silence meant death. He believed that the lack of human ships in known space meant extinction. He could not imagine a species that would spend 8 centuries planning, learning, and preparing for a single moment of justice. Sarah pulled her hood up and moved toward the exit. Her work here was done. Soon, very soon, the galaxy would learn what humanity had become in their long exile. They would discover that some wounds never heal and some debts can only be paid in full. The great station continued its slow rotation around the neutron star at the galaxy's heart. Aliens continued their business, making deals and forming alliances, unaware that they were being watched by eyes that remembered everything and forgave nothing. In the depths of space, hidden ships received Sarah's transmission and added it to their databases. Across the galaxy, humans in disguise gathered the final pieces of information they needed. The time for watching was almost over. The time for justice was about to begin. Earth looked different than it had 800 years ago. Where once green continents had sprawled beneath blue skies, now massive cities stretched from pole to pole. The oceans still existed, but they were covered by floating platforms that held billions of people. The sky was filled with ships moving in careful patterns, like blood cells flowing through arteries. Admiral Marcus Webb stood in the observation deck of Luna Station, looking down at the world his ancestors had died to protect. His great-great-grandmother had been on New Eden when the Kethmoran ships arrived. She had been 7 years old, playing in the gardens when the first bombs fell. She had watched her parents die, had hidden in the ruins for 3 days before. The rescue ships found her. She had been one of only 30,000 survivors pulled from the burning world before it became uninhabitable. Those survivors had carried their stories back to Earth like seeds of rage that would grow for centuries. "Sir?" Captain Rodriguez approached from behind, her footsteps soft on the metal deck. "The final fleet reports are ready for your review." Marcus turned away from Earth. Rodriguez was young, barely 30, but her family had been preparing for this day just as long as his. Her grandfather had helped design the quantum stealth systems that would make their ships invisible to enemy sensors. Her father had worked on the gravitational weapons that could crush a battleship without firing a single energy blast. "How many ships do we have ready?" Marcus asked. 12,000. 418 combat vessels, another 8,000. Support ships, 6 million trained crew members. Rodriguez spoke the numbers like a prayer she had memorized. "Every major shipyard in the system has been running at full capacity for the last 50 years. Marcus nodded. For 8 centuries, humanity had lived with one purpose. Every scientific breakthrough, every technological advance, every decision made by their government had been focused on this single goal. They had turned their entire species into a weapon designed to answer one specific threat. And the intelligence reports from our observers?" Rodriguez handed him a data pad. "Complete tactical information on 47 Kethmaran worlds, ship movements, defense patterns, communication protocols. Captain Chen's report from the Council Station confirmed our final target priorities." Marcus scrolled through the information. Detailed maps of every Kethmaran military installation, schedules of ship patrols, names and locations of every important leader. The humans had spent centuries learning everything there was to know about their enemy. "What about the other species?" Marcus asked. "The ones who watched New Eden burn?" "Full files on all of them, sir. The Centauri who refused to send aid because it would hurt their trade agreements. The Rigelians who abstained from every council vote about intervention. The Andromedans who actually increased their business with the Kethmoran after the genocide." Marcus felt the familiar cold anger settle in his chest. The Kethmoran had pulled the trigger, but the rest of the galaxy had loaded the gun by doing nothing. They had all made the same calculation. Human lives were worth less than their own comfort and profit. "Sir, there's something else," Rodriguez said carefully. "We've detected increased Kethmoran patrol activity near the Outer Rim. They may be getting suspicious about the pirate attacks." Marcus smiled without humor. The pirate attacks had been humanity's way of testing their new technology while gathering final intelligence. Quick strikes against isolated ships, always leaving no survivors and no evidence. The aliens thought they were dealing with ordinary raiders. They had no idea they were being studied like lab specimens. "Let them increase their patrols," Marcus said. "In 3 days it won't matter." He walked to the command center, Rodriguez following behind. The vast room was filled with hundreds of technicians working at holographic displays. Each one was coordinating a different aspect of humanity's plan. Supply lines, communication networks, weapon systems, all working together like parts of a vast machine. General Harrison looked up from a tactical display as Marcus approached. She was old enough to remember the first refugees from New Eden. Though she had been just a child then, her entire life had been spent preparing for this moment. "Admiral," she said, her voice crisp and professional. "All fleet commanders report. Ready. The stealth systems are functioning perfectly. Every ship is invisible to current galactic sensor technology." Marcus looked at the display showing the positions of human ships throughout the galaxy. Thousands of dots, each representing a vessel filled with people who had grown up hearing the stories of New Eden. People who had been born into a culture built around one simple promise: never again. "Timeline?" Marcus asked. 72 hours. 14 minutes, Harrison replied. "Simultaneous emergence from stealth across all target systems. Every Kethmaran world will wake up to find human ships in their sky." Marcus thought about Ambassador Zek Thul, probably still on the Council Station, still telling his proud stories about burning human cities. In 3 days, he would learn what those stories had cost his people. "What about civilian casualties?" Marcus asked. It was a question he asked every day, one that kept him awake at night. "Projected to be minimal, sir. Our weapons are precise enough to disable military targets without affecting civilian areas. The Kethmaran will lose their ability to fight, but not their ability to live. That was important. Humanity had learned to be better than their enemies. They could have built weapons to crack planets and burn atmospheres. Instead, they had created tools of surgical precision. They would destroy the Kethmoran military machine completely, but they would not become monsters in the process. Rodriguez pulled up another display. Sir, we're also ready to broadcast the evidence files to every species in the galaxy. Complete documentation of the New Eden genocide, plus records of who knew about it and did nothing. Marcus nodded. The galaxy would learn the truth about what had happened 8 centuries ago. They would see the pictures of burning cities, hear the voices of children calling for help that never came. They would understand exactly why humanity had spent so long preparing for this day. The council station? Marcus asked. Special operations. Team is already in position, Harrison said. Ambassador Zekthul will be taken alive. The galaxy will hear him confess to his crimes. Marcus felt a moment of satisfaction at that thought. The alien who had boasted about genocide would stand trial before the very council that had failed to stop him. Justice delayed was not justice denied, not when the delay made justice absolute. A younger officer approached with another report. Sir, final confirmation from the stealth reconnaissance ships. All target systems are clear. No unexpected defenses, no changes to the intelligence reports. Marcus took a deep breath. 847 years of preparation were about to be tested. Generations of humans had lived and died to make this moment possible. Children had grown up studying Kethmoran language and culture. Scientists had spent their entire careers developing new weapons. Engineers had designed ships specifically for this one purpose. Send the final authorization codes to all fleet commanders, Marcus ordered. Operation New Eden begins in 72 hours. As the commands went out across the solar system, humanity's children prepared to keep the promise their ancestors had made in the ashes of a burning world. The galaxy had ignored their cries for help once. It would not have the chance to ignore them again. The long memory of humanity was about to wake up, and the universe would learn what 8 centuries of patient rage could accomplish. Commander Vextar of the Kethmoran Third Fleet was reviewing routine patrol reports when his universe changed forever. The scaled officer sat in his command chair aboard the battleship Eternal Fang, watching the peaceful stars of the Keth-Ara system on his main display. This was home space, the heart of the Empire. Nothing had threatened these worlds in over 300 years. His sensor officer suddenly stiffened at her station. Commander, I'm reading massive gravitational distortions across the system. Something's wrong with our instruments. Run diagnostics, Vexatar ordered, though he felt a chill of unease. The Kethmoran military prided itself on having the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Their instruments did not malfunction. Sir, diagnostics show everything normal, but I'm reading impossible energy signatures. It's like space itself is rippling. Across the Kethara system, similar scenes played out on 47 Kethmoran worlds. Sensor operators stared at readings that made no sense. Defense commanders tried to understand why their instruments were detecting massive objects that couldn't be seen. Then, all at once, the universe revealed its new truth. 12,000 ships appeared from quantum stealth simultaneously across Kethmoran space. They materialized as if reality itself had decided to unveil them, massive vessels of sleek design. That looked like nothing any alien had ever seen before. They were black as space itself, their hulls seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. Commander Vexistar watched in frozen horror as 300 human ships appeared around his home world. They hung in space like hungry predators, their weapon ports dark, but somehow threatening. Each ship was easily twice the size of his battleship, and they had appeared without triggering a single alarm. "Battle stations!" Vextar roared, but even as the alarm klaxons began to wail, he knew it was already too late. Whatever these ships were, wherever they had come from, they had achieved total surprise against the most powerful military in the galaxy. On the planet below, Supreme Admiral Kraztul of the Kethmoran Navy was in an emergency meeting with the Planetary Defense Council when the report started flooding in. Every world, every fleet, every military installation was reporting the same thing. Unknown ships appearing from nowhere, surrounding their positions with overwhelming force. "How many ships?" Kraztul demanded of his communications officer. "Current count shows 12,400 enemy vessels, sir. They've appeared simultaneously at every major military target in the Empire." Kraztul felt his blood turn cold. The entire Kethmoran Navy numbered only 8,000 ships, and they were scattered across the galaxy on patrol routes and garrison duties. Whoever had planned this attack had somehow deployed nearly 50% more ships than the Empire possessed, and they had done it with perfect coordination. "Who are they?" Kraztul asked. "What species could hide such a massive fleet? Are they Andromedans, Rigelians?" Before anyone could answer, every communication screen in the room activated simultaneously. The image that appeared was of a creature that made several Kethmoran officers hiss in recognition. Bipedal, pink-skinned, with forward-facing eyes, and no visible claws or fangs. It looked soft, harmless, almost pathetic. It looked human. "I am Admiral Marcus Webb of the Human Defense Fleet," the creature said in perfect Kethmoran. "For 847 years, we have waited for this moment. Today, the children of New Eden have come home." Supreme Admiral Kraztul stared at the screen in disbelief. Humans were extinct, wiped out centuries ago. This had to be some kind of trick, a psychological warfare tactic by one of the Empire's enemies. "Impossible," Kraztul whispered. "We killed them all." The human's eyes seemed to look directly at him through the screen. "You killed 12 million of us on New Eden. You thought that was all of us. You were wrong." Across the Kethmoran Empire, every military commander was watching the same broadcast. On 47 worlds, the descendants of those who had celebrated the genocide of New Eden now learned the price of their ancestors' crimes. "You will power down your weapons," Admiral Webb continued. "You will order your ships to full stop. You will prepare to be boarded. Any attempt to resist will be met with immediate and overwhelming force." Commander Vexitar found his voice. "This is impossible. We have the most advanced military in the galaxy. No one could have built such a fleet without our knowledge." As if responding to his words, the human ships around Cathara demonstrated exactly how wrong he was. Invisible fields of gravitational force reached out from the human vessels, gently but irresistibly taking hold of every Kethmoran ship in the system. Vextar watched in helpless rage as his engines shut down without any command from his crew. His weapons powered down automatically. Even his life support systems came under external control, operating normally but no longer responding to his orders. "How?" he whispered. The answer came not from the human admiral, but from his own censor. "Officer, sir, they're not using energy weapons. They're manipulating gravity itself. They're treating our ships like toys." On every Kethmoran world, the same thing was happening. Defense platforms that had never been defeated simply went dark. Orbital. Weapons that could crack moons became as harmless as sculpture. The most feared military in galactic history had been neutralized without a single shot being fired. Admiral Webb's image appeared on screens throughout the Empire. In military headquarters and civilian centers, in the halls of government and the homes of ordinary citizens, every Kethmoran could see the face of humanity's justice. "For New Eden," the human said simply. "For the 12 million who called for help while you burned their world. For the children who died crying for mothers who would never come. For all of them, we have returned." The broadcast changed to show images that made grown Kethmoran warriors flinch away from their screens, cities burning under orbital bombardment, families huddled in shelters as death rained from the sky, children's bodies in the rubble of schools and hospitals. "These are the images your ancestors celebrated," Admiral Webb said. This is what Ambassador Zekthul calls his greatest achievement. This is what the galaxy allowed to happen while they counted their profits from trade with your empire. Supreme Admiral Krastul tried to rally his forces, but every order he gave was useless. His fleets could not move. His weapons could not fire. His communications were being monitored and controlled by technology that made their most advanced systems look like stone knives. 847 years ago, you taught us that the strong do what they must and the weak suffer what they will, Admiral Webb said. Today, you will learn what it means when the weak refuse to remain weak. Across the galaxy, other species monitored the broadcasts with growing horror. The humans, the extinct humans, had returned with a military force that made every other fleet look like children's toys. They had hidden for 8 centuries, growing strong while the galaxy forgot they existed. On the Council Station, Ambassador Zekthul watched his empire's humiliation with disbelief turning to rage. "This cannot be happening," he snarled to anyone who would listen. "They are extinct. We made certain." But even as he spoke, human ships were appearing around the Council Station itself. The neutral ground where he had boasted about genocide was now surrounded by the descendants of his victims. The galaxy was learning a new lesson that day. Some species, when pushed to the edge of extinction, simply died. Others, the dangerous ones, spent centuries growing strong enough to push back. Humanity had chosen to push back, and the universe would never be the same. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had never seen anything like it. Representatives from 200 species crowded into the Great Chamber, their voices creating a chaos of fear and confusion that the translation systems could barely handle. Some demanded action, others wanted to hide. Most simply wanted to understand how humanity had fooled them all for 8 centuries. Chairman Veltar of the Altarian Federation called for order, but his words were lost in the noise. On the massive screens around the chamber, reports continued to flood in from across the galaxy. The entire Kethmaran military had been neutralized in less than 6 hours. Not destroyed, but completely disabled. 12,000 human ships had accomplished what the combined fleets of the galaxy could not have done in years of warfare. Ambassador Zekthul sat in his delegation's seats, his scaled face pale with shock. For the first time in his long life, the Kethmoran diplomat looked like what he truly was, an old reptile whose time had passed. His empire's invincible fleet was now floating helpless in space, their crews waiting to see what humanity would do with them. "Order! Order!" Chairman Veltar finally managed to make himself heard. "We will hear from the human representative." A section of the chamber's floor began to rise, forming a speaking platform. As it reached its full height, a figure materialized on it. The human appeared out of thin air, just as their ships had appeared from stealth. She was tall for her species, with gray hair and dark skin marked by old scars. Her uniform was simple but somehow carried more authority than the elaborate robes worn by galactic royalty. "I am Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the universal translators. "I speak for humanity and for the dead of New Eden." Zekthul tried to stand, but found himself held in place by an invisible force. When he spoke, his voice cracked with age and fear. "You cannot do this. There are laws, treaties. The Council will not allow—" "The Council?" Admiral Chen turned to look at him, and Zekthul fell silent under her gaze. The same council that debated for 3 days, while 12 million humans burned? The council that voted 17 times to express concern, but never once to send aid? She gestured, and the chamber's screens changed to show archived council records from 800 years ago. The assembled delegates watched their predecessors argue about jurisdiction and trade implications, while an entire world died. "We listened to every debate," Admiral Chen continued. "We recorded every vote. We noted who spoke for justice and who spoke for profit. We have been very thorough in our record-keeping. Chairman Veltar's tentacles writhed nervously. Admiral, surely we can discuss this situation like civilized beings. What happened to New Eden was tragic, but that was centuries ago. Those responsible are long dead. Admiral Chen smiled, and somehow that expression was more frightening than any weapon. Are they? Ambassador Zekthul, please tell the Council about your great-grandfather's war medals, the ones he earned for cleansing operations against human settlements. Zekthul's yellow eyes widened. How could they know about family records that were kept secret even within the Empire? Or perhaps, Admiral Chen continued, we should discuss the Centauri trade agreements that were expanded immediately after New Eden's destruction. Funny how profitable it became to do business with the Kethmoran once their pest problem was solved. The Centauri delegation shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Their forearms gestured in patterns that meant distress in their culture. The Rigelian mining consortiums that bid for the rights to strip mine New Eden's ruins before the ashes were even cold. The Andromedan corporations that provided the sensor jamming technology that prevented rescue ships from finding survivors. With each revelation, Admiral Chen turned to face another delegation. Each group she named fell silent as their species' complicity was laid bare before the entire galaxy. 847 years, she said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. 847 years we have watched you. We have seen which species profited from our genocide. We have noted who celebrated our supposed extinction. We have recorded every trade deal, every alliance, every quiet agreement to never speak of what happened at New Eden. The chamber was completely silent now. 200 species, some of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, sat like children being scolded by a disappointed parent. You want to know what humanity has become during our exile? Admiral Chen asked. We have become very good at remembering. We have become excellent at planning, and we have become absolutely committed to the idea that evil should not go unpunished simply because it is old. A new image appeared on the screens. A star map showing human ship positions throughout the galaxy, the dots representing human. Fleets weren't just around Kethmoran worlds. They were positioned near the home systems of dozens of other species. Every civilization that could have helped but chose not to, Admiral Chen said, now has human ships 3 hours away from their capitals. Every species that profited from our people's death will have the opportunity to explain their choices. The Andromedan delegate's gaseous form flickered with panic. You cannot hold us responsible for the actions of our ancestors. We had nothing to do with New Eden. Neither did the children who died there, Admiral Chen replied. But that didn't save them, did it? Chairman Veltar tried to regain control of the situation. What do you want from us? Reparations? Formal apologies? Surely we can reach some kind of agreement. We want justice, Admiral Chen said simply. For 8 centuries, this council has represented a galaxy where the strong could commit genocide, while the weak could only watch. Today, that changes. She gestured again, and new images appeared on the screens. Human ships beginning to move toward non-Kethmoran worlds. Not attacking, but taking positions that made their intentions clear. Every species that was complicit in the New Eden genocide will make reparations. Not just money or resources, but changes to ensure such atrocities never happen again. You will create new laws with actual enforcement. You will establish intervention protocols that cannot be delayed by politics or profit. The Altarian chairman's tentacles writhed frantically. And if we refuse? Admiral Chen's smile returned, cold and patient. Then you will learn what happened to the last people who thought humanity was too weak to demand justice. The silence that followed was broken, only by the quiet hum of the translation systems. Throughout the chamber, the representatives of galactic civilization realized they were no longer the strongest predators in their neighborhood. Humanity had spent 8 centuries becoming something new, a species that remembered everything, forgave nothing, and had the power to enforce their own vision of justice. "We are not here to conquer," Admiral Chen said, her voice softer now but no less frightening. "We are here to balance the scales. New Eden's dead will be answered for, one way or another. The choice of how that happens is yours." As she spoke, reports continued to come in from across the galaxy, human fleets moving into position around every world whose governments had failed the test of 8 centuries ago. The descendants of New Eden's survivors were keeping their promise to the dead, and the galaxy was finally learning the price of looking away from genocide. The age of consequences had begun. Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the human flagship Remembrance, watching the last Kethmaran fleet gather around their homeworld like wounded animals seeking shelter. Below them, the planet that had spawned 8 centuries of nightmares spun slowly in the darkness of space. 3 billion Kethmoran civilians lived on that world, going about their daily lives while human ships decided their fate. "Sir," Captain Rodriguez reported from her station, "all Kethmoran military assets have been neutralized. Their government is requesting terms for surrender." Marcus nodded but didn't take his eyes off the planet. Somewhere down there in the halls of the Kethmoran High Command, the descendants of New Eden's killers were learning what it felt like to be helpless. The irony was not lost on him. "What's the status of the civilian populations?" Marcus asked. "All major cities are functioning. Normally, sir, our intervention has been surgical. Military targets only. No civilian casualties reported." That had been the hardest part of the plan. Humanity could have built weapons to crack worlds and boil atmospheres. They could have turned the Kethmoran Empire into radioactive dust in a matter of hours. Instead, they had chosen precision over power, justice over vengeance. "Admiral," Communications Officer Park spoke up, "we're receiving a transmission from the surface. It's Supreme Commander Krazatul himself." Marcus turned to face the main screen as the image of the old Kethmoran appeared. The alien leader looked ancient, his scales dulled with age and stress. His yellow eyes held the weight of a species that had just learned they were no longer the apex predators of the galaxy. "Human Admiral," Krazatul said, his voice carrying the formal tones of military protocol, "I am authorized by the Kethmoran High Council to discuss terms of surrender." Marcus studied the face of his enemy's descendant. Krazatul had been barely hatched when New Eden burned, but he carried the genetic memory of his species' triumph. Now he was learning that some victories carried prices that took centuries to come due. "Supreme Commander," Marcus replied, "you are not in a position to negotiate terms. You are here to receive them." Krazatul's throat sacs inflated with what Marcus recognized as fear response among his species. "What do you want from us? What are your demands?" Marcus gestured, and the screens around the Kethmoran commander filled with images from New Eden. Burning cities, mass graves, children's bodies in the rubble, 800 years old, but preserved in perfect digital clarity. "I want you to watch," Marcus said simply. "I want you to see what your ancestors did. I want you to understand why we have spent 8 centuries preparing for this moment." For 10 minutes, Krazatul was forced to watch the genocide his people had committed. Marcus had seen these images thousands of times during his military training, but he watched again. Every human did. They never allowed themselves to forget. When the footage ended, Krazatul looked physically ill. His scales had shifted to the pale green that indicated nausea among his kind. "Now," Marcus said, "you will listen to our terms." The conditions were simple but absolute. The Kethmoran Empire would be dissolved. Their military would be disbanded, their weapons destroyed. Their territory would be divided among the species they had conquered over the millennia, with humanity overseeing the transition. "And what of our people?" Krastul asked. "What becomes of the Keth-Moran race?" Marcus had spent months considering this question. It would have been easy to answer with extinction, eye for an eye, genocide for genocide. His people would have cheered such justice. But that was not who humanity had chosen to become. "Your species will survive," Marcus said. "You will be relocated to the outer rim systems far from the civilized galaxy. You will be given the tools to build a new society, one that does not require the suffering of others to prosper. Your children will learn a different way to live." Kras'tul's relief was visible, but Marcus was not finished. "However," he continued, "every Keth-Moran who was alive during the New Eden genocide, everyone who participated or knew of it and did nothing, will stand trial before a tribunal of the species they have wronged. Justice delayed is not justice denied." The old commander nodded slowly. He had expected death for his entire species. Exile was mercy, even if it came with the price of accountability. "There is one more thing," Marcus said. "Ambassador Zekthul has spent his career boasting about the genocide of my people. He will confess his crimes before the Galactic Council. The galaxy will hear the truth from his own mouth." On the council station, Zekthul sat in a holding cell that was more luxurious than most beings' homes, but was still undeniably a prison. Human guards stood outside, their faces hidden behind helmet visors that made them look like death itself. The door opened, and Admiral Chen entered. She moved like a predator, all controlled violence and patience. Zekthul had spent his life around dangerous beings, but none had ever made him feel as small as this human female did. "Ambassador," she said, taking a seat across from him, "in 1 hour you will address the Galactic Council. You will confess to the crimes committed at New Eden. You will name every participant, every official who knew and approved, every species that aided the genocide through action or inaction." Zekthul tried to summon his old arrogance. "And if I refuse?" Admiral Chen placed a small device on the table between them. It projected a holographic image of Zekthul's family compound on the Keth-Moran homeworld. His children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren were visible going about, their daily routines. "Your bloodline includes 43 individuals across 4 generations," Admiral Chen said calmly. 14 of them are old enough to stand trial for war crimes. The others are children who have done nothing wrong. Zekthul felt ice form in his stomach. "You would not harm innocents. Your people do not kill children." "No," Admiral Chen agreed. "We do not. But we do hold people accountable for their choices. Your confession will be complete and honest, or those 14 members of your family will join you in the dock for trial. The choice is yours." An hour later, the Galactic Council watched in stunned silence as Ambassador Zekthul confessed to crimes that some species had convinced themselves were myths. He named names, revealed documents, and described in detail how the genocide had been planned and executed. With each word, the last defenses of willful ignorance crumbled. When he finished, Admiral Chen stood to address the council one final time. "The age of pretending evil does not exist because it is convenient has ended," she said. "Humanity has returned to the galaxy not as conquerors, but as conscience. We will be watching, we will be remembering, and we will ensure that no species ever again faces extinction while the galaxy counts its profits." She paused, looking around the chamber at the faces of beings who would reshape their civilizations rather than face humanity's justice. "New Eden's children have grown up," she said. "We have learned patience, precision, and the value of proportional response. But we have also learned that some debts can only be paid in full, and some promises can never be broken." As the human fleets began their long journey home, the galaxy started the difficult work of building a better version of itself. New laws were written with enforcement mechanisms that could not be delayed by politics. Intervention protocols were established that prioritized lives over profits. The Keth-Moran Empire became a cautionary tale told to children about the price of unchecked cruelty. Humanity took their place not as rulers of the galaxy, but as its guardians. They established listening posts throughout known space, watching for signs of genocide, slavery, or systematic oppression. When such signs appeared, human ships would follow, carrying the promise that evil would not go unanswered. The children of New Eden had kept their oath to the dead. They had become strong enough to ensure that no species would ever again face extinction while the galaxy looked away. In learning to balance justice with mercy, humanity had become something the universe had never seen before, a civilization that grew more dangerous the more moral it became. The galaxy had learned to shudder when humans came to end a grudge, but it had also learned to hope when humans came to prevent the next one from beginning.